Good morning. Good morning and welcome to the Ventura Center for Spiritual Living. I'm Reverend Bonnie Rose, and it's great to see you here today. Let's start our celebration service. And so it is, and so we allow it to be. As we breathe even deeper and allow ourselves to settle in and open up as we listen to the words of our sacred reading.
We Breathe You by Armando Garcia Davila. There was a curious dusting of a talcum-like substance on my car one morning last week. I drove away. It flew off, disappearing into the air. Then it came to me. The fires. The terrible, terrible fires, reducing your homes, your towns, even some of you, into fine ash and carried on the wind 30, 40, 50 miles off. We read newspapers, see the pictures and videos, wring our hands and pray. My wife packed blankets, pillows, food, and water. Paper says you can leave them at the community market. They'll get them to the victims. I couldn't get into the market's driveway for the long lines of those dropping off their boxes filled with concern and love. I heard that I could take the items to a union hall. We hope to get enough to fill a semi-truckload, the man at the hall said, but we got that on the first day. We're sending another. So many good people. And the ash of your homes, towns, of you, we breathe it in, taking you into our bodies. You literally become us, streaming through our hearts.
So as we sing today, I am remembering who I am. We remember that the I am is all of us. And so we know this truth for ourselves, but we also know it for every person, near and far, every being, every aspect of the universe. The great I am is here. And today we get to remember it. My remembering supports your remembering supports my remembering. We remember together as we sing. And we hold this energy together. The energy of remembrance of the I am presence in all beings. As we breathe in deeply and then exhale, opening our eyes in love with what is, as it is, and so it is.
We are not afraid, although we know there's much to fear. We were moving mountains long before we knew we could. There can be miracles when you believe. The hope is frail, it's hard to kill. Who knows what miracles you can achieve? When you believe, somehow you will. You will when you believe. In this time of fear, when prayer so often proved in vain, hope seems like the sun. Nakita v'chasketa, Amzugaata, Ashira, Ashira, Ashira. Ashira Adonai, Ki Hoga'a. Ashira Adonai, Ki Hoga'a. Mi kamocha ba'elim Adonai, Mi kamocha nehedar b'kodesh. Nakita v'chasketa, Amzugaata. Nakita v'chasketa, Amzugaata. Ashira, Ashira, Ashira. There can be miracles when you believe. The hope is real, it's hard to kill. Who knows what miracles you can achieve when you believe. Somehow you will, now you will. You will when you believe. You will when you
So thank you, choir, and thank you, band, and thank you, everybody, for being here. I'm going to start by telling you all a story. This is actually a true story, and a friend of mine told me, and it happened to a friend of his. This is a friend of a friend that was taking classes at UBC, the University of British Columbia. And he was a liberal arts major. But as many people know who go to liberal arts college, you have to take some other courses that are somewhat outside of your realm of comfort, just to give you a broad education. So he had to sign up for a science course, and he did. So he signed up for the science course, and it came to the midterm, and he was taking the midterm, and he looked at it, and he said, you know, there's like 50% of these questions, and I don't have a clue what they're talking about. So he did the best he could, and then he went and he looked in his records, and he saw that he had actually signed up for an advanced science class. And all of the other students had this basic knowledge that he didn't have. So he went to the school administration, and he tried to see if he could get out of the class without ruining his grade point average. And the school said, oh, no, sorry, it's too late. You're already into the midterms, so you can't get out, and you're just going to have to do the best you can, and your grade point average will probably suffer for it. So this guy, I like to think that he was a science of mind student and perhaps a practitioner. He had a really good attitude. And he said, well, I'm just going to do the best I can. I'm going to come to class when I can. I'm going to learn something perhaps, and I'll just try and trust God that it's all going to be okay. And so he did. He came to class occasionally and went on over a few more weeks, and then it was time for the final. So he said, I'm going to take the final. He sat, he took the final, he looked at it again, about 50% of the questions he didn't know. But there was this extra credit question at the end, and he didn't know the answer to that either, but he said, if I can get this extra credit, maybe there's a chance. The question was, how does lightning help the earth? The answer is, in real life, that lightning actually helps get nitrogen out of the air, and it falls into the soil, and then the plants absorb it, and in a form that we can use, and then we use it, and nitrogen is the third most important compound in the human body. I read on the internet today, so it must be true. But anyway, lightning helps nitrogen get into the soil. But this kid didn't know that because he hadn't taken the basic science classes. So he's pondering, what am I going to write? And finally he wrote something down and he said, this is just going to have to do. He turned in his paper, and then the next day he got a call from the school administration. And the school administrator said, the professor graded your paper, and he was so impressed with the answer that you wrote, not necessarily for its accuracy, but for its creativity, that we've decided to cut you a break. and to let you get out of this class, and it won't affect your grade point average. And he said, wow, that must have been God-inspired, because the answer that I wrote was, lightning is good for the earth because it scares the crap out of the cows. I'm glad you liked that story. He actually used a different word, but you know. So why this story on a talk about service? Well, you know, is it just to make people laugh in a time when we could use a laugh? That's part of it for sure. You know, it's always important to remember to have a little bit of levity when things are burning up around you. Is it a premonitory statement about what's going to happen here on this stage in a week? Not on Sunday morning. We're having church on Sunday morning, but on Sunday evening, which is Christmas Eve, we have our Christmas event, which has, count 'em, 16 live animals in it. And 18 handlers. The turkey requires 2 handlers, and one of the bunnies is so big he requires 2 handlers. But there's other animals too. There's Dominic the donkey, there's Maui the horse, and there's often a little bit of poo on the stage. And it's usually the horse. He was good for years, but then I don't know what got into him. He just started, you know, whatever. What, lightning, yeah. Lightning. So it's partially because of that. But does it have anything to do with Hanukkah or Christmas or service even? And I would say, because I blend the sacred and the profane, and we are all learning to see the presence of God in everything, I would say that everything is connected. And that really, what this story speaks to, besides the humor of it and the joy of it, is that there is this incredible, vast, creative force in the universe that creates the miracle of lightning that can take nitrogen atoms out of the air and let them drop into the earth and then become a form that plants can use that then feed our bodies. That is an incredible force. That is an incredible power. And that force is so vast, and yet it's so personal. I mean, lightning is vast, except the little nitrogen molecules, atoms, whatever they are so incredibly tiny and such a part of us. And there's also the energy of creativity of that student who didn't give up and just decided that he was going to come up with something, and everything turned out okay. And so we have an opportunity here in the center and in our lives to participate with that vastness, to play in that vastness, to play in the energy of knowing that everything in the earth is serving everything else in the earth. Get that? The lightning serves the nitrogen serves the plants serve our bodies. And we exhale, it serves the plants. Everything in the earth is serving everything else. I have a quote here from somebody. Sadie McFague, who is someone that Richard Rohr, the theologian that Richard Rohr likes. And she wrote, if one understands God to be not a substance, but the active, creative love at work in the entire universe, then loving God is not something in addition to loving the world, but is rather the acknowledgement that in loving the world, one is participating in the planetary process, which some identify as God, the planetary process of self-emptying love at all levels. All of creation is self-emptying. All of creation is giving unto itself. All of creation is serving every other aspect of creation. And we get to be part of that if we believe. And if we don't just talk about the oil in the lamp that can go for 8 days, but if we actually put the oil in the lamp and step out in faith and trust this vast creative process that cares for us immensely, and we experience that care as we care for it through the form of caring for one another. Now, there are many, many kinds of service, many, many ways in which we can serve and become part of this cycle of everything serving everything. And one of the miracles of Christmas Eve and the business about getting 16 animals on stage is, You know, there's a lot of anticipation about it. If you've never been to that service before, there's always, it's become kind of a community thing. The church is packed. We always run out of programs. We always run out of candles. And, you know, who knows what will happen this year with what's been going on. But people have this great anticipation. And the anticipation is fueled as we're doing the skits and doing the music by, we hear various animal noises in the lobby as they're getting ready to come in. Rachel the duck, I don't know what Lonnie's doing to her, but she's often quacking away. You know, we'll hear quacks and we'll hear honks, and sometimes we'll hear a whinny of the horse as he's getting his pre-show high colonic. Who knows? Whatever. They're doing something to that horse. I don't know what it is. But there's such anticipation, and anything can happen on the stage. Anything can happen before the animals come on, and when the animals get on, everything is fine. And what do the animals do? They just stand there in their innocence. Walt Whitman wrote, "I think I could turn and live with animals. They are so placid and self-contained. I stand and look at them long and long. They do not sweat and whine about their conditions. They do not lie awake in the dark and weep for their sins. They do not make me sick, discussing their duty to God. No one is dissatisfied. No one is demented with the mania of owning things. No one kneels to the other, nor to his kind that lived thousands of years ago. Not one is respectable or unhappy over the whole earth." And that is the power of the animal kingdom. And the beautiful thing about the animals, too, is that they're really good at just being present, being innocent, being here. And also, when they mess up, it's really quite entertaining. You know, I went to and they don't care that they messed up. I went to that horse thing, that Cirque du Soleil horse thing, Cavalia. And there, you know, so it's all these horses without leads on racing around, and most of the time they cooperate, you know, but there were these scenes where all of the horses were downstage, and they were all doing something downstage with their trainers, and then you'd see one horse up there who's like, "I'm not doing that." And he's just goofing around up in the choir loft area, and it was so much fun to watch the trainers, because they're like, "Oh yes, this is supposed to happen. Let's go get that horse." You know, they just run up and get the horse. But it was part of the delight. And what does this have to do with all of us? What if we could be like the animals? What if we could know that just our being is enough? That our being here is a form of service, and that when we mess up, that our flaws are part of our wonder. What if we could celebrate our beingness? What if we could find immense and infinite value in it, just like we do with the pig and the bunnies and the squawking duck on the stage? What if we could also know that when we make a mistake, that there's also value in that? That there's value, and this is a form of service in itself, just our showing up and just our being. And it's service when we actually know that, and when we reinforce it in each other, and when we see it in each other, and when we see it in ourselves. Yesterday, I went on the High Spirits Ministry caroling gig over at the Victoria Care Center, and it was so sweet. I really appreciate Jennifer and Sue, who set the whole thing up. And there were a lot of elderly people there in various forms of well-being or not well-being, and you know that our society tends to sometimes discard and discount elderly people, and yet their presence there meant so much to us. They're singing along with the carols, and they're smiling, and they're clapping, and visiting with them afterwards. It was a beautiful thing. So their just being was of value, and your just being is of value here on the planet Earth. So if we know that for ourselves, and if we know it for another person, then that is a form of service. Can you look around you and see all of the value in this room? Just look at somebody and just see how valuable they are. Beauty, total beauty in this room. And may we know that for each other, and may we reinforce that in each other constantly as we move into the coming weeks and the coming year. Because I want this service, this church, this destiny to explode as a community of service, where we truly know the truth and live as if that truth is true. So that is part of it. Knowing our own intrinsic value and knowing the intrinsic value of others and recognizing it and bearing witness to it. And there's more. So Recently at Trader Joe's, I bought this amaryllis bulb. How many of you plant amaryllis bulbs at holiday times? And you know how beautiful they are. They're just radiant. And if I didn't believe in God already, I would look in the flower of an amaryllis bulb and start to believe, because they're just amazing. and the one that I got at Trader Joe's was in this sealed thing. I don't know if anybody's seen them. It's like this sealed container. Yeah, and you don't have to water it. What's up with that? It's in this rubbery thing. So I got it. I was like, this can't be real. It's in this rubbery thing. You don't have to water it. And it's growing. But you do have to do one thing. You have to put it in the light. You have to shine the light on it. And so my question for us this morning is, okay, we have the service of knowing that we're valuable, of knowing other people are valuable just as they are, even when we mess up, even when we poop on the stage, sorry, even whenever. We know that. We know that about ourselves. But is there another step? Is there something else that we can do in order to really thrive in service? And I think it's shining the light so that we can bloom. So how do we shine the light? I've got a story. Brock told us this in his testimonial. It was years ago, though, and people may not remember it. When Brock first came to this church, it was at a difficult time in his life, and I feel like I'm putting words in your mouth, but I'll just go for it, okay? So he liked the church. He was sort of set back. You know, most new people sit back there. I don't see many new people back there today, but he liked the service, but he kind of sat in the back and didn't really want to participate. And then there was that hideous part of the service where I say, greet somebody, get a hug and a handshake, right? And he was like, please, Jesus, don't let them hug me, please, please. Perhaps I am putting words in your mouth, yeah. But then one day, he was in his, please, Jesus, don't let them hug me mode, and Bill Seal came up to him and said, hey, Brock, Brother Brock, let's go hug somebody. And so Brock started initiating hugs with people. And then he got the idea that, oh my gosh, this is service. This is a church service, and in a service, we're supposed to serve. Well, I can't do it. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. In a church service, we're supposed to serve. What a concept. So I think that shining the light so that we may bloom is actually the willingness to serve past our comfort zone, and to sometimes serve when we think that we don't have enough oil in our lamp, when we think that we're depleted, when we think that we don't have the skills or the resources, to actually open up and to allow that greater service to move through us. Because the greater service is the energy of spirit, the vastness of spirit that creates lightning and nitrogen and everything in between that serves everything. That is what serves through us when we get our objections out of the way and we allow it. I experience this quite a bit, because I often have a lot to do, and sometimes I don't want to do it. And often, once I get started, it's the best thing that I could do. It's a beautiful thing. You know, I was thinking something that happened years ago when I was working as a nurse at Sloan Kettering, which is a big cancer hospital in New York. And when I first started working there, I was looking at being a professional singer, and I was sort of arrogant about it, and I was like, oh, this job is beneath me, and blah, blah, blah. And then I read some Science of Mind stuff, some Louise Hay stuff, and I'm like, oh, that is like totally the wrong attitude. I need to know that this job is important. And as soon as I knew that this job was important, I started seeing the beauty of the position and seeing the love that was there, and the tragedy and the depth and the power that would ultimately help me in what I was destined to do, which is this. And I remember starting to put more and more love and energy and service into my job, even though at times there were things that I didn't want to do. You know, there was one night we worked 12-hour shifts and worked from 7 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. And it was about 7:15, and I was making my last rounds on my patients and seeing if they needed anything before I went home. And there was this one elderly gentleman that I really liked that had cancer, and he was at the end stage of his life. And he stopped me and he said, Bonnie, I really, really want to talk to you. And we had had lots of conversations before, so he knew that I had spiritual inclinations. And I just knew that he was going to ask me about the meaning of life or something. And all I knew about the meaning of life at that point was that I really wanted to go home and put on my slippers and all that stuff. But I reluctantly stopped and I said, okay, what did you want to tell me? And he told me that he didn't get many visitors because he hadn't made many friends over the years. He had never married. He had never had children because he was ashamed of himself. And he was ashamed that he was gay. And he wondered if when he died, if God would love him even though he was gay. I'm so glad I said yes. Because he got a minister that could just absolutely tell him that God does not give a rat's poo-poo whether or not you're gay or straight or anything in between. That God is love and love is love. And I was able to hug him and tell him that his version of heaven would celebrate when he arrived and say, you loved deeply, and this act of loving, of making this confession at the end and seeking love is part of your beauty and part of your glory and part of your power. And he could know with me a better future for gay people in future generations. So that was a situation where I didn't really want to serve. I was reluctant to serve, but something within me knew that I should, and something within me knew that I could, and I was the perfect person to do it. And that situation, that condition is waiting for you as well. The trick is to simply turn within and ask. Say, Spirit, Spirit who is everything serving everything. Spirit who is love divine, all loves excelling. Spirit that is joy and peace and harmony and grace and goodness, that is infinite strength and infinite wisdom and infinite love. Is this mine to do? And if you get a yes, even if it's beyond your comfort zone, I recommend that you do it. And then you'll bloom and you'll thrive. And the whole world will bloom and thrive because of your service in new and wonderful ways. You see, everything matters. Everything matters. Everything that we do, every act of service, every act of kindness has this beautiful ripple effect, and it all matters. I'm going to tell you one more simple story of service that matters very deeply to me, and that I'm assuming matters to a lot of the members in this congregation. So the fires, it's kind of hard to remember back when the air was clear. It's been going on for a long time, but this was one of the first day of the fires, the first morning after they started on that Monday night. And one of my big concerns about the fires was certainly the well-being of the people in this congregation, my friends, and all of you, whether I know you well or not. Would your homes be safe? Would your lives be safe? Would your pets be safe? But another one of my big concerns regarding the fires was Tina, our animal handler, and her 20-something animals that she has on her ranch in Wheeler Canyon, which is right in the fire zone. And I saw on Facebook that she had evacuated, but she had to leave the animals behind because they had to get out in a hurry. And so I just kept praying, and I asked other people to pray, and just praying that those animals would be okay. And I kept checking Facebook, and I tried to get to Wheeler Canyon just to see if I could just see if it was burnt up. But the roads were not open, and I couldn't get down there. So I just had to trust and just pray and continue to pray and to continue to call forth faith and to just trust that God was there in the fire with the animals doing what God needed to do. Several days later, Tina posted a post on Facebook, and she said, all of the animals are safe. There was only one injury, and that's a minor injury. So they're all safe. They're coming for Christmas. But it gets even better than that. Several days later, she found out why they were safe. And she said that there is a cowboy on her ranch named Wiley, and he evacuated with all of them. But then, when the fires didn't clear, he went back to the ranch. Now, Tina had showed me pictures of how the fire stopped this far away from their enclosures and how even parts of their enclosures were scorched and there were holes burned in them. But the fire did not consume any of the enclosures or any of the animals because this lowly, glorious cowboy named Wiley spent the night and covered everything with water and did what he had to do. He saved all of her animals and her home. There is no greater love than a cowboy named Wiley who will give up his life for his animal companions. Right? I was quoting the Bible there, actually. That's exactly the way Jesus said it. So we have work to do. There are literal fires and there are metaphorical fires going on the planet Earth now. Things are both perfect and imperfect at the same time. We can show up as the presence of who we are and know that that is enough. We can know that our bearing witness to the divine presence in others is enough. And we can also know that there is something in addition to that that we can do if we really want to bloom, if we really want to thrive, if we really want to see the earth thrive, if we really want to see all beings thrive everywhere. And that is we can serve past our comfort zone. We can live better than we know how to live. We can love better than we know how to love. And we do this by getting out of the way and allowing the Spirit of God, that Spirit that makes lightning and nitrogen and everything else, serve through us. I want to thank all of our volunteers that have served over this past years. You are what make this church. We could not do this without you, and you are so glorious and you are so wonderful. And if you have not yet found an area of service, I want to invite you to become uncomfortable, to find an area where you can serve and watch your life bloom into grace and greatness and friendship and goodwill. Let us together give a huge round of applause for everyone who has served and everyone who is about to serve. Yay! I see our horse handler in the balcony. Yeah. You gonna be mindful of that, this year? Bring a diaper, bring a towel or something. Yeah, okay. All right. So we're ready to pray. So Chris, you may assume the position. All right. And so we turn within and trust and know the power and the presence of the living God that lives and moves and has its perfect being through each of us. We trust that this God is that vastness that creates everything, that is serving everything, and that we have that divine encounter as we serve it. We are served as we serve, and as we serve, we are served. We move into this beautiful awareness of this beautiful, beautiful relationship that we have with service and know that the service and the spirit and the love and the goodwill and the friendship and the power of the living God moves through us. And so first we know that we are enough. We value who we are in all of our flaws and wonder. We trust that our mere showing up is presence enough. And we see that in ourselves and we see it in other people. But we also stretch past our comfort zone to serve in places where we trust that we are called, but places that feel a little treacherous or a little uncomfortable. We trust that there is something greater within us that will move through us and give us the words, give us the tools, give us the skills and the abilities, the talents to do exactly what we must do. And we know that as we participate in this great ring, in this great arena of service, that we participate in something magnificent, in something real. Our service leads us from the unreal to the real. It leads us from ego into spirit. It leads us into this beautiful, beautiful realm where two become one and three become one, and we are that vastness and that wonder ourselves. So I am just so grateful for this power, so grateful for this presence, so grateful for the transformation that I know has taken place here today because of our spiritual work together, grateful for our own personal transformation, for our transformation as a community, and for the transformation of all beings through our spiritual labors. And with a heart that blesses all paths to God, churches, synagogues, temples, mosques, ashrams, I say thank you, Spirit, thank you, God. And I release these words into the divine mystery, and together we say, and so it is. I am